exciting news. We wrote our first book. People always ask us what book to start with and where to even begin with Irish mythology. That's not just Irish. Celtic mythology covers Scottish, Irish and Welsh, and it's beautifully illustrated. It's available online and it will spark your love affair with these tales. Conas, how are ye? Welcome back to the Candlelit Tales podcast, where we tell Irish myths set to original music. My name is Aaron and I'm one half of the sibling storytelling duo, and in this episode we continue our series on the Fianna, aka the Fianna Saga, which started all the way back in episode 254, so go back to the start of that if you're a little bit lost. To listen to our reflections and our chats and to support this podcast, you can join our Candlelit crew by following the links below. But for now, here's Orica. Tell us the story, will you?
Ever since Sive had gone from him, Fionn had never found love like it. He'd never found anything he could really call love. He'd had flings, he'd had wives, he'd had friends with benefits, but he had never found that kind of love again, not even close. But he never stopped looking. And after a while he started to wonder if the problem was that he was mostly looking at mortal women. Sive had been one of the she. Maybe it was only with the same kind that he could find that sort of bliss again. And one day, the Fianna were out hunting. On the side of a hill called Barnes Moor, they were hunting a pig, but this pig was vicious. It was dark in colour, it squealed and it turned, and when the hounds brought it to bay, it turned around and charged at them. It killed 10 of the hounds of the Fianna. Only Bran was brave enough to take this pig on, and she leapt at the pig, snarling. And when Bran had the pig pinned, Fionn was ready, spear in hand, to drive the death blow home, and just before he did, the side of the hill opened. A very tall man stepped out, stooping, and he looked down at Fionn and asked him to please leave the pig alone. Fionn called off Bran, put his spear away, and agreed it wasn't wise to refuse the she, and the tall man invited Fionn and the Fianna into his she-mound to host them, to give them a meal, and he brought the pig in too, still kicking. And as soon as they were inside, the tall man struck the pig with a hazel rod. And there was no pig. There was a young woman, beautiful, graceful. And Fionn, looking at her, thought again of Sive. This young woman did not look like Sive, but she was comparable to Sive. And he'd met her first as an animal. And he began to think, or rather hope, that perhaps she might be like Sive. And at the feast that they were given, he sat beside her. He tried to engage her in conversation. She seemed shy, reluctant to talk, but Sive had been shy at first as well. And so at the end of the feast, Fionn had made up his mind. And he asked the young girl if she would come back with him, if she would be his bride. She would come back to Ireland and live with him at Almuin. The girl said nothing, but the tall man said, "Yes, yes. You should do that, Scahawk, shadowy one. You should go and marry Fionn McCool." And the young woman nodded. And then she called for her harp. It was a strange harp. Of course it was a she-mound. Many things were strange under hill, but it was a harp with only 3 strings. One of iron, one of bronze and one of silver. Fionn asked his new fiancée what they were, and she told him. "Well, if I play this one," she said, "the iron one, you'll all weep. It only plays the music of sorrow. And this middle one, the bright one, the bronze, if I play that, you'll laugh until your sides are sore. And this one is my favourite." She pointed at it. "The silver one. You want to know what happens if I play this one?" And Fionn nodded, thinking how wonderfully well they were getting along. So she played it. And Fionn's eyes grew heavy, and his head nodded. And he slept. He and all of the Fianna slept, and when they woke, they were back on the hillside, where they'd first seen that pig. So not just any fairy woman would do for Fionn McCool. But still he had some optimism. Perhaps there might be someone out there for him. And it was not long after that the Fianna were out hunting again. This time they were near Sláine, and they saw a beautiful woman come walking towards them. She had a beautiful gown of green on her and a cloak of red, and in her hand there was a drinking horn. And she stepped so slowly and stately towards them, and she was so finely dressed with such beautiful jewellery. Fionn knew immediately that she must be one of the Sidhe. No one could have gotten this far with no mud on the hem of her dress. So he went and he greeted her himself. She said her name was Doran, daughter of Bove Darug Macandagda. And that was not just a Sidhe lady, but the daughter of a Sidhe king. So Fionn was very impressed. He asked her why she had come and was very flattered to hear that she had come to woo him, to be the wife of Fionn McCool. He was glad and he was relieved, and he felt somewhere a lifting of something, some dark cloud that had been on him for a long time, a little stretch and a little ease. Of course, his patience only had to be rewarded. Of course the perfect woman would come to him someday. After all, he had grieved Sive for so long, and would carry the pain with him always. But then she said, "If you meet my bride gift." And Fionn asked her, "Well, what bride gift?" Thinking gold or jewels or something of the like, something he could easily provide. That wasn't what she asked for. She said, "If I'm to be your bride, you're to have no other wife, no other woman in your life, from one end of the year to the next. And half of your time I'll have. All the time that you spend with the Fianna hunting, I'll have half of that. And all the time you spend in your hall feasting, I'll have half of that. And all of the time you spend sleeping, I'll have half of that." At that, Fionn looked at her. He said, "I wouldn't give that bride price to any woman, not any woman in the world, not even Sive. No, I won't give it to you." Crushing disappointment settled back on his shoulders. That defeat, that keenly painful loss. She smiled and shrugged and held up the drinking horn and said, "Well, no hard feelings." Fionn could smell the mead in it, and the tang of it, the burn. He could feel it even in his nostrils. It was strong drink. But Fionn was under bonds. He never refused anything from a feast, and mead was definitely at home in a feasting hall. So he took the draught and he drank it. She smiled wider, then she turned and walked away. The drink burned its way down Fionn's throat, burned its way into his stomach. And as he turned back towards the rest of the Fianna, all laid out on the hill, lolling and talking and laughing, with their hounds at their sides, it curdled into something bitter in his stomach. That heaviness, that disappointment. And as he looked out at all the Fianna now, all he could see of all of them was the disappointment, the moments that they had disappointed him, the moments when they had slipped in battle, or failed in the hunt, or said something or done something that made his life just a little bit harder. The weight of all of those slights, all of that, felt crushing. And when Conan Whale came up to him with another insulting jibe to get him going again, Fionn found that he could not hold back. "You bald sheep stiff-backed fool. No one likes you. No one's ever liked you. The only reason you're in the Fianna is because you're a brother, who's the only man alive who can stand you." Conan Whale looked like he'd been slapped. He was well used to dishing out insults, but he was well used to Fionn's even temper. So he turned away. "I know where I'm not wanted." And he left. Fionn was glad to see him go. When his one-eyed brother came up, he looked at him, dead in that one eye, and said, "Every day I think about blinding you. Every day I think about finishing the job my father started. Because what good are you? Old now. Past your best. Over the hill. There was a time. There was a time Gull MacMorna was the greatest warrior in the Fianna. And now my grandson, he's not even fully grown. He'd run rings around you, and we both know it. And without that, there's nothing left, Gull, is there? There's no wisdom to you. There's no mirth. There's no merriment. There's no poetry. You're just a fat, old man. Nothing to recommend you." Gull turned away as well. And one after another, they came up to him to try and talk Fionn out of this apparent madness. But for everyone there was a grudge. For everyone there was some slight. For everyone he unleashed it. And one by one they turned and they walked away in disgust. Caoilte MacGronan ran after them, trying to drag them back, begging them to come back, reasoning with them. But he wasn't spared either. Fionn looked at him. "You know, Caoilte, you've always been here. You're one of the few. You're one of the few of Clan Baskna, from back when my father led the Fianna. You're one of the few still around, aren't you? Hopping in and out to the other world, coming back when it pleases you, playing with time as if you own it. It always makes me wonder, you know, when he needed you. When I was young and exiled, living in the forests. 'Cause you'll say you're loyal till you're blue in the face. You'll run from one end of the country to prove it. But where were you? Where were you when my father lay dying? Where were you then? Were you off on one of your adventures? Chasing pigs over waves? Doesn't matter how fast you are, Caoilte, when you get there too late." Caoilte didn't turn away. He looked at Fionn. Right in the eyes he saw the rage and the fury and the hurt. And he nodded. He said, "Yeah, I've got regrets. You're going to feel awful about this in the morning, you know." And he said no more. Fionn felt that bitterness grow in him as he watched Caoilte walk away. And he raged, screaming at the sky, wishing someone would come back and fight him, someone else that he could unleash this venom on, that he could feel boiling inside him. The frustration at having no target. But then he saw that Caoilte was coming back. He was coming back first with Diarmaid the Guine, who Fionn had driven off. And then Diarmaid stayed, and Fionn was able to tell him a little bit more about what he thought of Diarmaid, really thought of Diarmaid, all those opinions that he had kept inside, all of those slights that Diarmaid hadn't even noticed at the time that Fionn had been holding on to. And then Caoilte came back with MacLugad. And Fionn had 2 targets, and then over the course of the day, Caoilte came back. Again and again and again and again, bringing with him each time another of the Fianna, talking to them, encouraging them, till they all came back. And they gathered around Fionn out of reach of his fists when he wanted to swing at them, which he sometimes did, and they watched him scream and shout and spit at them and stagger to and fro. And they waited. And eventually, Fionn fell asleep on the grass. And Courtship was right. When he woke, he felt the worst he had ever felt. Even worse than when he'd lost his scythe.